Welcome back, everyone. Excited to rejoin with you. I hope you had a great break, stretching your legs, maybe connecting with some plants. Our next plant communicator presenter is Tigrilla Gardenia, or Gardenia, sorry, MS, nature-inspired mentor, certified life coach, and world ambassador for Plant Advocacy. She empowers creative multipotentialities and nature-inspired professionals to confidently live authentic, purpose-driven lives in a co-creation with plantkin. With 25 plus years in arts, technology, communications, and social innovation, her work bridges plant neurobiology, ecosystem thinking, community dynamics, and esoteric knowledge. A citizen of Damanhur spiritual community in Italy and host of the ReConnect with Plant Wisdom podcast, Tigrilla's interspecies journey began with a chance encounter with a plant musician. She is a Gaia Featured Expert, Kabbalist, Biomimic, international speaker, and founder of the Naturally Conscious Community, an online ecosystem to nourish plant-centered relationships. Welcome, Tigrilla.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm going to share before I get into things. All right. Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me here. So I like to start with a question. So I'm going to ask a question. Have you ever walked past a tree, a hedge, or even a potted plant and suddenly felt something? Text your sister, I don't know, take a side street, a memory, a message. You didn't really think it exactly, you kind of felt it. And just as quickly as the thought kind of comes into your mind, something else comes in and you say, oh, well, I'm going to ignore that. Or, oh, I was just distracted. Or where did that come from? Right? Does that sound familiar? It's one of those things that we often experience. And that tug of war between your intuitive sense and your thinking brain, between what you feel and what you're told you're supposed to justify or prove, it's really where a lot of us in the world of plant communication or connection with other kin really get stuck. Because today, I'm hoping we're going to bridge that gap a little bit more. Because what I call inner plantness, your innate plant-like way of sensing, isn't a fantasy. I mean, it's real data that's coming from your body. Your body is collecting this data all the time. You've just been trained not to trust it. And now you don't even necessarily know how to interpret these sensors that have been offline for so long. So today we're going to talk about reclaiming your inner plantness. Over the next, I would say about 18 minutes, maybe. I'll reconnect you through story and rhythm and hopefully a short scent-based practice to senses that you might not realize are still fully active, senses that help you understand the messages plants are already sending you. And this is really about getting into somatic knowing. It's that kind of full-bodied perception that most of us have been trained to ignore. We disconnect from our body. We oftentimes focus just on the mind, even though it's how we navigate the world most naturally, by listening to these senses. So you're probably already sensing in some ways. Some of you are more conscious of it and some of you are not. But most of us just haven't had a name for it. We don't talk about the names that we use for plants for senses. And so we don't really give ourselves the permission to trust this. So here's how we're going to explore this together. 3 shifts that I hope are going to help you move from, am I making this up, to, wow, I'm actually receiving something real and I can trust that that's where it's coming from. And the first one is going to be about composting the hustle, right? Stillness isn't indulgent, right? Being still, being present, being sessile to a certain extent is a process of recalibration, a natural phase of growth, like roots that are pausing to sense what's next and what direction should I go. And so when you stop pushing, your intuitive channels actually open up. Your connection to these alternative sensors start to re-engage. Then we're going to talk about daily and seasonal rhythms as hidden senses. When your body follows natural rhythms, daily, monthly, seasonally, and so many more that you probably are no longer tuned into, which we see and we experience with our plant friends, these are the different seasonal and cyclical ways that we can step into these rhythms. You begin to notice the timing of messages that are being received by these sensors that you don't really know how to name. And then the last piece that we're going to talk about is the fact that somatic data, data that comes from my body, is scientific data. We now have research that backs up what many mystics and indigenous traditions have long understood. Your body's signals are measurable, they're valid, and they're trustworthy. So by the end of this talk, you won't just hear these ideas, you're going to feel them. And I'm going to leave you with a 7-minute plant music meditation to try later tonight. It's not about adding something new to what you are. It's not about putting more into your space. It's about noticing what's already happening in your body and recognizing it as the start of a conversation that's coming from other kin. So let me tell you about Margaret. On paper, Margaret had it all together. She had everything, right? She had a finance executive, she was a mother, she was a home builder, highly, highly scheduled, always delivering. But Dandelion kept showing up, literally pushing through the cracks in her patio and metaphorically nudging her attention all over the place. Pictures, images, conversation pieces. Dandelion was there, present. And eventually, Margaret couldn't ignore Dandelion anymore. So she decided to listen. And she tried really hard to open herself and see what Dandelion wanted to say. And interestingly enough, she quit her job. Can't really tell you why. She asked for a divorce. She also doesn't, well, that she knows why. But she told her grown kids that she was moving to a new home that she felt called to buy at the top of a mountain when she walked onto this property and met the mother tree of this home. But even there, sitting under this massive oak tree on this land, her head was still filled with to-do lists. Fix the porch, email the contractor, how do I get water to the garden? She told me, Tigrilla, I can feel the mother tree trying to guide me, just like Dandelion guided me. But I can't hear the messages clearly. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I've been trying to figure this out alone, and I'm failing. So I asked her something simple. How comfortable are you doing absolutely nothing? Just sitting, eating bonbons, listening to the wind. And that became our shorthand. Every time she got caught up in the doing, in the I have to think my way through this situation. I have to be in action and be active. In other words, when she defaulted to her animal self, I would say bonbons. And she'd pause and she'd flip back into her plantness, into that sessile, present beingness with sensors open and awareness of the area around her. And she'd breathe and she'd listen with her whole body. Because here's the truth: stillness processes information. Plants stop, can sense, can decide. Can don't just keep growing into a rock or a wall. Can stop and collect information. They don't do things with brute force. They sit with it and then they reroute to the direction they need to go. And if you think about it, compost kind of works in the same way, right? You don't really rush your compost, right? You let things break down, and only then do the nutrients emerge to feed new life. So Margaret began calling this her compost mode. Her job was no longer to just produce, but to notice, to listen, to trust her own sensors. And over time, the messages of the mother tree and all the other beings of that land started to come in more clearly. Dandelion became her partner in remembering, in resilience. You don't need to do more to be more. Every part of you has a purpose, including the parts that pause. And eventually, the mother tree gave her one more message. You've done what you came here to do. Let go. When she finally could hear her own self through the noise, when she could hear the beings of the land, when she understood that everything could speak to her if she allowed herself to listen, she opened her senses and felt her body nod in agreement. She told us this month that the house is officially sold and she's off on a walkabout with a slight detour to Disneyland. She let Kin know how grateful she was for the support and growth that she received. While she was sad to leave, she feels Dandelion close because it's Dandelion that accompanies on her journey. She's excited and curious. And even if the seed of what comes next hasn't been planted, she knows that that deep taproot into herself, into her true plantness is there, and that now she will hear the messages wherever they come. And she's ready to set out on a new chapter, not with a 10-step plan, not with everything mapped out, but with trust. So now I know that you might be thinking, right? Stillness sounds great, but I got things to do. I don't get messages like that. What are we talking about here? But the truth is that you might tune in and you might be way more in tune than you might think. Look, back when I lived in Barcelona, yeah, I've been living in Damanhur for the last almost 15 years. But before that, I did almost 4 years in Barcelona. Oh, how I miss that. But here's the thing, when I was living there, I noticed something odd. I noticed these odd patterns in the way that my day was broken up. Times of the day when, for example, strategy would come in really easily. I was building a new business. I was creating a new life for myself after, well, those are other stories you could hear on my podcast. But there were other times when instead creativity would flow, or times when I really needed to rest, when my body would just say stop. So I started to log everything about my rhythms. It was an experiment. It was just me and I had time. And so I thought, all right, I'm getting rid of the alarm clock and I'm going to see what comes up for me. And I realized that for me, but from the time that I wake up to about the time of late lunch, you might say, because it's Barcelona, it's Spain, right? We do lunch late. My brain was super sharp and big picture strategy would flow. In the afternoon, I would eat and then it was quiet time. Time for connection, for siesta, which to be honest, I still take to this day. And then right after that time was my favorite time for coaching or teaching or holding space, really deep conversations. It's when my kind of body felt most open to things that were beyond just linear logic. And in the evenings was a time for me for deep rest. Luscious dinner, time with family and friends, a good book, the latest binging series that I'm watching. If I naturally would wander back to my computer, my workspace, or anything after 10 p.m., and I say naturally, not forcing it, but like, oh, I'm walking by there, I wonder what's going on. Oh my goodness, it was like wildfire, like creativity just bursting at the seams. Ideas would come pouring out of me, imagery and mystical meditations and spirituality and all these things. Eventually, I rebuilt my entire calendar around this. No alarm clocks, no forcing. And the results? Not just better work, but like actual words would come and arrive in the mornings. And then in the afternoons, I would get these somatic feelings. So everything just shifted. For example, today I work with Noel, the Christmas cactus, who is my business partner, my plant business partner, in the afternoons, because Noel is somatic. Noel uses the body, just like this little person behind me, Miss No Name Dresenia, who loves to work with my senses, with my exploration, with my way of understanding the world. But my previous plant business partner, Spider Plant, and I used to really work in the mornings because Spider Plant was verbal. Spider Plant would explain things to me in a way that was clear and crisp and would help me understand how the way plants create ecosystems was the way I should create my business. So by shifting around my schedule and letting myself be that, I could get clear messages from the people, plant people, human people, other kin that I collaborate with. And this is what the plants teach me, to flow with these cycles like they do. Can open and close at certain times, can release scents based on light and pollinators, can know when to be active and when to rest, this thing that we forget about. So I often ask my clients, and I'm going to ask you, what if it's not that your intuition has a problem? What if it's not that you're not connecting, but what if your timing is just off? So try this for a week, right? For 1 week, jot down how you feel every hour or two. No judgment, just observation, and just see what rhythms come up. I bet you're going to begin to notice when your senses are most open and which senses are most open. And that's when those plant messages can really land in that way. It's evening for me here. I'm more animated. My body moves more. In the morning, I have my business meetings and I was writing things down. So when you tune into this, you'll find that it's easier to tune into the messages, including those that even humans are giving off unconsciously. So now I know some of you have like this kind of more scientific way of looking at it and says, that sounds lovely, but where's the proof? And that's a fair question, right? We've had so many years of trying to understand how plants operate and their agency and their thought process and all these types of things. Most of it, to a certain extent, anecdotal, right? But technology didn't really permit for more than discussions or observations and experimentations to figure out what many of us have known all along. Plants are intelligent beings with vast lived knowledge and a desire to co-create with humanity. In recent years, plant neurobiologists have shown that roots send electrical signals similar to neural spikes, and chemists have mapped out just plant conversations through airborne compounds. Engineers are even turning leaf signals into music. Meanwhile, researchers are measuring gut reactions and sensory flashes in humans, the very feelings that many of us get when plants communicate, because we're entangling these pieces. This is real, it's measurable. It's just that the science is catching up to what many of us have felt all along. And humans are starting to recognize what they already know. Plants co-create what we call nature. That word that some of us would try to use to describe something that's outside of our human selves, when in reality, it is the very essence of who we are. And as more and more humans reawaken from their plant disparity disorder, the signals our plant friends share become stronger and the knowledge easier to understand. It's here in this shared experience that the true wisdom of our planet becomes known. Bottom line, somatic data is science. It's just that it hasn't all been graphed out yet. Your body is the technology, inner plantness is the interface, and stillness is how the transmission is passed. So let's bring this all together. Stillness gives you space to hear. Rhythm helps you tune the dial. And your body already knows how to read the messages. All we need to do is reactivate this instrument panel. You don't need more effort. You need more listening, full body listening. So to help with that, I've created a 7-minute scent-based meditation to plant music. So you can scan the QR code, it's the one all the way to the left, or find it on Insight Timer under Expand Your Senses, track 4, Smell. There's actually 6 of them total. Let it guide you back to sensing the full extent of your olfactory without overthinking it. This is so much more than what you've smelled so far. This is smelling with your plantness as a plant. And if you're curious about exploring this work in the community, you're warmly invited to the Naturally Conscious community. It's a safe space for nature-inspired thinkers to root into their brilliance alongside plant kin and one another. You'll find live events, creative groups, deep discussions, and plenty of room for you to be your beautifully wild self. And if you're feeling called to go even deeper, I'm hosting a 3-hour live ReConnect with Plantkin workshop on the 28th of June. It's Reawaken Lost Senses, a plant-guided expansion to perception. We'll explore the sensory intelligence plants help us remember so your inner knowing can become clearer, steadier, and more aligned. Details are all on the websites, or you have these QR codes here. So reclaiming your inner plantness means returning to the knowing that's always lived in you, rooted, responsive, and ready to connect. Once again, I'm Tigrilla Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor, life coach, and bridge between plant wisdom and human potential. Thank you for being here and nourishing your inner plantness with me today. I hope to see you in a class or over a virtual cup of tea. Remember to resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance.
Thank you so much, Tigrilla. And I'm sure everyone is also very excited and happy to have your wonderful offerings. So thank you.